doing. I'll be doing my thing. The world spins round to the right, they say. I'll be spinning the other way. Doing what I can, doing what I know. The world's my stage and I'm the show. It is my destiny. It is the truth I seek. In this world I find a way to cross the line. No possibilities for originality. Don't be left behind. Go ahead and cross the line. They say yes, I say no. Telling me to stay, I'm gonna go. We gotta be who we gotta be. I gotta be who I gotta be. It is my destiny. It is the truth I seek. In this world I find a way to cross the line. No possibilities for originality. Don't be left behind. Go ahead and cross the line. Evil in the souls of those who don't know. Step on the line and be your own. Listen to the voice, to the spirit's free. Come alive and fly with me. It is my destiny. It is the truth I seek. In this world I find a way to cross the line. Brace for impact, coming fast. Hold your breath, but it won't last. The walls are closing in, I'm barely standing tall. But I'll survive the fall. Brace for impact, the storm is near. I'll face my demons, strong I feel. The crowd will break, but I won't break with it. I'll rise above and I won't quit.
Hey now, it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it's still the same. We're talking TNA wrestling. TNA is on their hiatus, although they did have a pretty good documentary last night, but I don't think we learned anything from it. So there's like no real news to talk about with TNA. I do have some business notes that from WrestleTix that Dave put in the Observer this morning, but no real news to talk about with TNA, man. It's a slow time. If you're watching this on YouTube, I apologize for my for the lighting in here. I got my overhead light on. As you can see behind me, I have my ring light on. I have the window next to me. I opened the window and watch. Look at this shit. So this is why I was trying to fix my lighting. I wanted to go live, and then I saw my video. So I was like, okay, let me fix the lighting. So I just played the song. I played the Cross the Line remix while I'm trying to fix the lighting. Look at this shit. For whatever reason, it makes it darker. I have no idea why. I need a lighting expert and a lighting guru. Jason in the chat says TNA. What's up, Jason? How are you doing, sir? Thank you guys for joining me on this beautiful Friday morning here in the Great American Southeast. I am excited to be here. The plan was to do this show last night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we postponed it 12 hours later at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And because my kids did not really want to do bedtime last night, like neither one. So my son had a late nap, and so I was watching him, and he was kind of a mess. And my daughter was having a tough one, and it became a whole thing. And so by the time I pretty much had knew, like by right around 8:30, 9 o'clock last night, I wasn't going to be able to do the show. So I went ahead and I put it out on Patreon that the show was going to be postponed until today. And then I was thinking maybe doing it tonight at 10 p.m., but I had a break in my schedule, man. I'm working from home today, as you can see, doing some remote work. And I knocked out a ton of work this morning. I just got right to it. And Knocked it out, and I don't have a meeting until 11:30, and I only have 2 meetings today, so that's good. So I got an early morning run in. I did a 5K this morning. I had some breakfast, took my daughter to school, got a bunch of work in, and now it's 10:15 a.m. and here I am talking TNA wrestling. So but I am excited to talk about TNA wrestling. So like I said, no modern news to talk about. So what we're gonna do today, after I get past the latest updates from Bound for Glory and some Scott D'Amore stuff, once you get past that from the Observer, we're gonna journey back to 2005, and so we have a whole thing. So if I watched Bound for Glory 2005 this week, I actually watched it yesterday. So we're gonna talk about that, man. But first, let's get to the latest update. So, WrestleTix updated its Bound for Glory number of total tickets out. That number would be larger than the number in the building. Okay, so when I said I did not think that they had 7,800 people in that building and that was an entertainment number, this is why, right? And TNA is not the only company doing this. All the companies are doing this. Okay. WWE is notorious for it. AEW, who is the quote unquote honest company. As we know, they used kind of an entertainment number for All In a couple years in a row, and Brandon Thurston kind of called them out on it. So, I normally wouldn't even worry about stuff like this, but when they have Chris Bay coming out and they're announcing they broke the record for Slammiversary. They broke Slammiversary's record for their North American attendance record, and I have to call bullshit on it because that's not true. So WrestleTix updated its Bound for Glory number of total tickets out. That number would be larger than the number in the building because comps are counted in this number, even if they don't show up. Plus, unsold secondary market tickets are included. Okay, so scalpers buy tickets, and then people buy tickets, and all of a sudden they can't go. So what they'll do is they'll put them on StubHub, or they'll put them on the different secondary markets. And a lot of times those tickets go unclaimed, right? And so that's why if you saw a smattering of empty seats all throughout the building, it's because people get free tickets. They don't show up. People buy tickets that they can't sell. There's a lot of reasons for that. So plus unsold secondary market tickets are included. But the BFG number in Lowell, Massachusetts was 7,018, which would be the second largest North American crowd in company history, behind the 7,042 at the UBS Arena for Slammiversary. I'm always driving this point home. You don't have to lie about this stuff. I'm talking TNA, WWE, any promoter out there. There's literally no reason to lie about these numbers. The truth is impressive enough. So Bound for Glory had 7,018, which is coming from WrestleTix. And people will very likely get into my YouTube comments and say, well, that doesn't count walk up. Okay. If you think that there were 800 people day of the show that decided to walk up, God bless you. Okay. Or for Slammiversary, if you think that there were 600 people that walked up for that show, God bless you. I appreciate you. I love you. And I wish I could believe the things that you believe. Okay. But that is true. It's not counting like walk up tickets, right? The tickets that they sell at the building. At least I don't think that is. I mean, that this could include walk up because they're tracking every ticket that's being put available online. That could include walk up. So, but for argument's sake, okay, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but here's the only number that we got. This is the data that we can run off of. We can't use the data that TNA gives us, right? Now, if TNA wants to put out the receipts, right? If they want to provide receipts for this, which they won't, no company ever does. But if they would like to, I would come on here and provide that information and give an honest answer to it, right? If they wanted to provide the data behind it. Like, how did you guys get to that 7,800 number for Bound for Glory? How did you get to 76 or 77, whatever it was for Slammiversary? What kind of math did you use to get there? Like, who were you counting? I would love that information. They're not going to provide it, but I would love it. Until then, we're going to use WrestleTix. I think WrestleTix is fair across the board because all they do is count. So there's no agenda. There's no nothing. Now, Brandon Thurston or somebody like that might be able to get the ticket scanned information, and I think that would be interesting. I get the feeling ticket scanned is going to be in between 6 and 6,500, my guess, just based off of like covering the stuff for as long as I have and reading the periodicals and just hearing the stories about how some of the stuff works. That would make sense to me. Again, very freaking impressive. And Terrence, I this is a great point. That's awesome that TNA did 7,000 plus in consecutive pay-per-view attendance or tickets distributed, however you want to call it, for the first time in its 23-year company history. This year's Bound for Glory. Now, we're not likely to get the pay-per-view buys because Dave's just not able to get that information anymore, at least for TNA. I don't know how he's getting AEW. I have a theory that he just gets the info from AEW and posts that, because I just don't think that the cable companies and the streaming companies and the different ways you can get it, I just don't think you can get an accurate representation of what those numbers are. So this is the only data that we're going to be able to get to determine how successful an event was. And as far as tickets, as far as attendance or tickets sold or crowd size, however you guys want to call it, this is very likely, and I don't even think it's even close, the biggest Bound for Glory in history. And this is their annual, so quote unquote, Super Bowl of the year. Like, this is their WrestleMania, supposedly. I think Slammiversary has always been bigger, but Slammiversary is typically a better show. And Slammiversary a lot of times is bigger. But I think this is huge. It's a big deal. Okay. So those are huge increases from the past and well ahead of numbers when the show was on Spike and when they had people like Hulk Hogan, Sting, Flair, Angle, Rob Van Dam, Hardy, etc. Basically, all the added viewership on Spike and the huge names meant less than the WWE approval. Okay, that's the key. WWE approval. Here's what he means, and here's what I've been telling everybody. So when a star leaves WWE and they go to TNA or they go to AEW, that audience doesn't follow them. Right. Some of them do, but for the most part, they're no longer on the big show. Nobody cares about them. In fact, when Christian was on TNA, I think he did TNA for like 3 years. He would be in the airport and people thought he had retired. Now, there was over 1 million people watching that show every week, but WWE fans didn't know because they only watched the WWE. Here's the difference between then and now and modern TNA and this relationship. WWE is telling their audience to watch TNA and to support TNA. That TNA is in the tent. TNA is approved. You can watch them. You can enjoy them. So not only are they watching them, are they coming to the shows and are they enjoying them? They're adopting them as part of their culture war against AEW. It's happening, and AEW fans are fighting TNA. It's pretty wild because for the longest time, AEW fans were constantly comparing themselves to WWE or comparing AEW to WWE. And now the war has shifted and now there is no comparison between WWE and AEW. So now AEW fans need a dragon to slay that is within reach. And so now they're coming after TNA. I noticed it in my mentions. And so they want that Tony Khan #2 wrestling promotion trophy. Right, they want that wrestling trophy that their boss gets, Tony Khan, and they want to be able to display that in their imaginary trophy case. And they see TNA as a threat, right? And so they're constantly mentioning that TNA. How can TNA possibly be #2 with some of the different things, cage match ratings, whatever the fuck that means, and all the different things. And they're insulted, they're threatened, and they're very upset by this. It's quite entertaining. I love it. So yeah, WWE has told their audience to watch TNA, and therefore TNA is now a much bigger product than it's ever been before. Okay, publicizing the product and using NXT talent. Also, wrestling is overall more popular than during that prior time period, even if more were watching on television because viewing has changed. The number did beat. Here's another thing. Okay, so this is something that I pointed out earlier this week. The number did beat AEW's Wrestledream 1 week later, and AEW was in St. Louis. In theory, a better city for drawing than Lowell, Massachusetts. Ain't that the freaking truth? Lowell, yes, Lowell is a suburb of Boston, but it wasn't Boston proper, right? TNA was in St. Louis. St. Louis is a historic wrestling city. TNA doesn't draw, or TNA was in Lowell. AEW was in St. Louis, and St. Louis is a wrestling town. Now, AEW has not been able to draw in St. Louis since they started running there. And in fact, I think NXT struggled there recently too, even with Randy Orton on the card. So there is something going on there. However, St. Louis is a much bigger wrestling town than Lowell, Massachusetts, and TNA had over 7,000 people at one point agreeing to be at the show. However you want to count the numbers. I think the only fair way to do it is because we'll never get the number unless someone does a ticket scan number. The only thing we can do is go with the 7,018 number that WrestleTix had. So that's the number of record at this point, right? TNA is going to say 7,800, but I think the number of record for, if we're being fair, is 7,018. And what I can do is I can go to my, I'm going to go to my Twitter real quick. Go to my Twitter real quick, and I'm going to pull up my tweet. Let's see, my tweet where I broke it all down for the month. Let me share a screen here. So here's the top 3 pay-per-view events by attendance, right? By attendance. Top 3 pay-per-view events in October by attendance. So number 1, WWE Crown Jewel. Now these are North American promotions. Obviously CMLL had some really big crowds. Number 1, Crown Jewel in Australia, claimed attendance 13,683. Number 2, coming in at number 2, and this is all per WrestleTix, of course, 7,018 with a claimed attendance of 7,794. And Wrestledream coming in at number 3 with 6,233 tickets. TNA beat Wrestledream by almost 1,000 tickets, right? Which is wild. Like, you know what? Give them like a little less than 800. That's kind of crazy, I think. And because of that, if you look at some of my mentions, people are threatened, right? This guy says, according to who? Wrestledream blew Bound for Glory away in quality. Well, no one was talking about quality. The one match that had a shot at matching it had an insanely bad booking, Slater versus Evans. I think we can all agree on that. I haven't seen Crown Jewel as a whole, but didn't watch the AJ Cena match. Didn't watch the AJ Cena match. Was awesome. Okay, so this person didn't watch the match but thought it was awesome. So here's another person. It says also NXT Halloween Havoc. That is this weekend. I don't think it's coming close to any of those 3. TNA has been outselling NXT for sure. CMLL has multiple pay-per-views this month that beat those 2. That is true. CMLL is on a heater. I was just talking about the US. So there you go. Oh, TNA Bound for Glory tickets distributor does not include walk-ups. I don't know how that is. Okay. Here's one. AEW is dying. That's not true. Dumb. Okay. Oh, let's see what Grok says. So this person says, hey, Grok, can you explain to this man how this is extremely misrepresenting and deliberate of him? And then Grok says, the post list attendance is using different metrics claimed, often including comps, turnstiles for WWE and TNA, but tickets distributed for AEW without a claimed figure. Okay, yeah, so Grok agrees with me. So you're a dipshit, sir. Try to come at me. But yeah, this is really good news for TNA. Really good news for TNA. Let's keep going. There's a little bit more news, and then we're going to get to Bound for Glory 2005. which was fantastic, by the way. TNA champion Mike Santana will face Sheldon Jean, Noah legend Sheldon Jean. For those of you wondering why I call him Noah Legend, there was a thing on Twitter years ago when TNA was bringing him in, and he had Noah in his bio. And so people that don't watch Noah, there's a couple of them. I think one person specifically thought he was like a legit Noah wrestler and like started put out there on Twitter as like, hey, maybe TNA is gonna have a talent agreement with Noah because they're bringing in Sheldon Jean. And my buddy Justin works for Noah. And I was like, dude, is Sheldon Jean working for Noah? And he goes, do you don't even know who that is? He goes, I don't think he's ever worked in Noah. And so we had to look it up in Cage Match. He had one match like 5 years prior. So like he had gotten like, cause Scott D'Amore and Border City, like Scott D'Amore coached him and he's a Border City guy. And Border City and Noah had been doing some talent exchanges. And when Sheldon Jean was super young, it sent him over to Noah, and then Noah sent over Kaito Kiyomiya and all that stuff. But that had been years prior to Sheldon Jean coming into TNA. And he had a short stint in TNA. There's just something missing with that guy. But yeah, Noah legend Sheldon Jean will be getting a shot at the TNA Championship on 10/27 for Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling in Toronto. The publicity stemming from Moose stating that he wanted to work for Maple Leaf Pro but wasn't able to due to TNA not allowing it led to talent being allowed to work there. TNA denied it existed, but more than one wrestler and another person involved in dealings said to us that what Moose said was accurate, although they had allowed Santino Marella and the concierge George Iceman to appear at Scott D'Amore shows. As noted, those who publicly denied there was anything to the story did tell us that the story was accurate, but once it broke and TNA denied it, they did change the stance that allowed this to happen. So Moose getting people work, that's good. Matt Hardy also did a Maple Leaf Pro show, but I believe his contract allows him to work indies, and that was not a deal made through TNA. Yeah, so at first Matt Hardy was announced, but he wasn't announced as a TNA wrestler. But now they have updated the promotion, and he's being announced as a TNA wrestler. The Hardy Boys are very likely re-signing. Oh, so the whole Scott D'Amore, I don't want to talk about that too much anymore. There are absolutely people in that company that think that they weren't allowed, and that might not have been a very official stance because of Santino and George Iceman. But there was heat between TNA and Scott D'Amore and whatever. They're allowed now. So if all the whole Moose thing led to this, good on Moose. So the Hardy Boys are very likely re-signing. I don't see them going anywhere. They're still the tag champions. They're being announced for all the shows coming forward. Matt Hardy has hinted that it's possible that they have re-signed already. And I think that announcement's coming soon. I don't know for a fact. I get the feeling that they'll be announcing that relatively soon. Probably a Sports Illustrated deal, considering Matt Hardy hosts a podcast with John Alba. So that makes sense. As far as the TV deal, I don't want to talk too much about it because it's kind of boring at this point. I'm just ready for it to be over. But Matt Hardy on his podcast hinted that it's going to be done and starting in early 2026. So nothing new on that front. Okay. Let's journey back to 2005. 20 years ago this week, when the world was a whirlwind of natural fury. So we had Hurricane Wilma happened in this week in 2005. One of the most intense Atlantic storms on record battered the Yucatan Peninsula on October 24 before slamming into Florida the next day, leaving millions without power and causing widespread devastation across the U.S. Southeast. That's us. Meanwhile, the Iraq War cast a long shadow with a devastating car bomb in Shia village near Bakuba, killing over 20 people on October 29, and a U.S. soldier lost to a landmine earlier in the week. Tragedies compounded globally. A Nigerian airline crash on October 23rd claimed 117 lives. I remember that. Shortly after takeoff from Lagos, while in India, a passenger train was swept away by floods. I remember that too, resulting in at least 35 deaths. On a political note, Argentina held parliamentary elections on October 23rd, marking a key moment in its post-economic crisis recovery under President Nestor Kirchner. And in the realm of entertainment and pop culture, the airwaves were dominated by Mr. Hitler himself, Kanye West, America's favorite Nazi lover, had his breakout hit Gold Digger, what a track that was, featuring Jamie Foxx, which held up the top spot in the Billboard Hot 100 for the week. And at the box office, the weekend of October 21st through October 23rd saw Doom. You guys remember that piece of shit? That movie was terrible. But, it was an action movie and had The Rock, and it was a video game movie. It was an action movie, video game movie, but it was terrible. Hold on, I just got to send that text message. Exploded on the screens in number one position, grossing over $15 million with its video game adaptation starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And it fought off family-friendly movies like Dreamer, inspired by a true story. I don't know what that is, but I know I know the animated movie Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I know what that is. So that's what was going on in that week. And then I looked up some celebrity deaths. So on October 24, civil rights legend Rosa Parks passed away at the age of 92 in Detroit. Her quiet act of defiance on a Montgomery bus in 1955, igniting the Montgomery bus boycott and becoming a cornerstone of the civil rights movement. President George W. Bush, the worst president in U.S. history, well, at least one of them, would later order flags flown at half-staff in her honor. Other notable departures included Nigerian First Lady Stella Obasanjo on October 23rd, American filmmaker John Muth on the same day. So that was, and then of course, let me go. I think there was another one. I'm pretty sure there was another one. Hold on. It was a wrestling related one. Oh, the Crusher. Yes, the Crusher also died that week. Let me go up to the Crusher real quick. Educate you guys on the Crusher. So, all right. So here's just, I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously, because that would take forever. But when Steve Austin hit big as a beer drinking anti-authority heel turned face in 1997, a lot of people tried to credit it towards some kind of social shift in values. But I remember when it was suggested to me, I knew it was bunk. Steve Austin was nothing more than a modern rendition of the man of the people, babyface, who isn't pretty, but in the end, the people have confidence in the toughest man in the ring and will always get the job done. Look no further than the Crusher, the man who made Milwaukee famous, who in the Midwest during the 60s and 70s was a predecessor of Stone Cold. He was a man known as a wrestler who made Milwaukee famous, a takeoff of the Pabst Blue Ribbon beer commercial with the phrase, the beer that made Milwaukee famous. A former weightlifter who had Herculean physique based on the standards of the pre-steroid era. So he's just a big chest, big shoulders, a big old beer belly, big thighs, just a big old meat-eating power lifter, meat-eating, beer-drinking, cigar-smoking power lifter, the Crusher. He broke into the business around 1950. Reggie Laskowski was the top heel who became the top babyface and more than Vern Gagne or anyone else truly carried the AWA. He continued to do so long after his physical prime and even when he could hardly do much of anything in the ring. In the 1950s, there was Laskowski brothers, tag team Reggie and Stan. Because of his powerhouse look with his trademark barrel chest, he even did feats at strength at times, so the public knew his power was legit. In brawling in-ring style, he became a singles headliner everywhere and was the villainous Crusher Laskowski. But like most of the great brawling heels of the era, the fans started respecting him for his toughness, and he became the one, the only, the Crusher. So yes, the Crusher died this week in 2005. So there you go. The Crusher. What a legend. All right. So TNA Bound for Glory 2005. Let's get into this Bound for Glory. I believe it's the first Bound for Glory that they ever had. This was not supposed to be the first Bound for Glory. The original Bound for Glory was supposed to happen the year prior with Hulk Hogan and Jeff Jarrett, and then that just did not go down. They had shot an angle in Japan. Actually, I think it might have been 2003, but they shot an angle in Japan, and they're working their way up, and they're supposed to do it in at the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville. But of course, Jeff Jarrett had gotten worked by Hulk Hogan, and they never ended up doing it. But here we are. So this is a crazy time in TNA. You got to think back. So just that summer, they had made the move over to Spike TV. Okay. They're on Saturday nights, late night on Saturday nights, doing good numbers for a late night on Saturday night. And right before this pay-per-view, they had just signed the Dudley Boys, and they started calling them Team 3D. So we don't have Sting yet. Sting doesn't come. He had been in the company a couple of times, but he is not a signed wrestler. We don't have Christian Cage yet. He comes later that year. And we don't have Kurt Angle. He doesn't come until 2006. So, but what they did do was have one of the best pay-per-views in company history, I would say. I thought it was great rewatching it. I had not seen it since it originally came out. So in 2005, during this time, I'm in Japan. I had just landed in Japan on Labor Day weekend, 2005. I'm living in the dorms. I'm a young airman, big party animal. And I got cable in the dorms, and that cable we got a Star Asia. And because we have Star Asia, Jeff Jarrett was able to make a deal with Star Asia, and so we got Impact there. So it was on Star Asia. It was 2 weeks after the fact, but we still got it. And I had just learned of Extreme Wrestling torrents at this point because we couldn't buy the pay-per-views there. There was no way to buy the pay-per-view on base. So I was forced to pirate it, which I probably was going to do anyway, but I had learned what Extreme Wrestling torrents was. And that's how I was able to watch this match or watch this show. So TNA delivered its marquee event, Bound for Glory, on October 23rd, 2005 in Orlando, Florida at Universal Studios, billed as the Super Bowl of TNA. Pay-per-view was a financial milestone, likely surpassing all previous TNA pay-per-view buy rates, with an estimate suggesting it performed in the range of weaker WCW and ECW shows from 2000 to 2001. The event drew a full house of 900 fans, so that's just in the studio, with 750 traveling across North America and beyond, including strong contingents from New York, Chicago, Japan, Italy, Australia, and the United Kingdom. The live gate generated approximately 45,000 and bolstered by 59.95 FanFest tickets. However, despite its financial success, the show fell short of expectations in execution, with last-minute changes and uneven booking impacting the overall quality. So that's the story of TNA right there. And we'll get into the last-minute changes because that is a significant story that I had completely forgotten about. Observer Newsletter conducted polls to gauge fan reactions to the event. So the overall rating was a thumbs up at 80%. Thumbs down was 5.8%, and thumbs in the middle was 14%. I'm a thumbs up on the show 20 years after the fact. I don't remember what I thought of it at the time. Best match on the show was AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels in an Iron Man match. I loved that match. Second best match was Sabu versus Abyss versus Rhino versus Jeff Hardy. Got 71 votes. That was the Monsters Ball, so that was the big Jeff Hardy doing the swanton off of the stage to Abyss. And the third best match was Sanjay Dutt, Austin Aries, Roderick Strong, Alex Shelley on the pre-show. Now, there were a couple of other pretty good matches. So Dave talks about it later, but I thought Monty Brown versus Lance Hoyt was an awesome big man match. But you got to remember the context of the time. TNA fans didn't like the big man matches for whatever reason. Like they wanted to see the X Division. So, but the crowd was hot for it. It was just a weird time. And Lance Hoyt was young. Lance, the modern Lance Archer, he was pretty young. And so maybe he wasn't as good as he is now, but I thought it was great. Like two young guys, and that's another thing I want to talk about in a little bit. So I actually thought that match was pretty good. So for the people that voted that the worst match, I hope you all rotted in hell because I liked that match. And then the Ultimate X match, which we'll get into a little bit, Wasn't the guy's fault. It had a botched finish, but it was an equipment malfunction. But I liked the way they ended it. I thought they actually recovered nicely. So the show was marred by last minute changes. So the event faced a significant setback when Kevin Nash was scheduled to face Jeff Jarrett in the main event, was hospitalized the day before due to chest pain. He underwent an EKG. So he's 46 at the time. Right. And now he's 66. God damn. Which revealed a cardiac issue, but not a heart attack. It's so crazy because just here recently, he was back having a procedure on his heart. He revealed a cardiac issue, but not a heart attack. His condition raised concern about his wrestling future, with some speculating he may have competed in his final match. Well, a year later, I think he was in WWE not too long after this. Not a year later, but several years later. In 2011, in fact, he returns to WWE, and he does the feud with CM Punk. So, with some speculating he may have competed in his final match, the booking committee scrambled overnight to restructure the show, implementing a controversial Plan B. The revised plan introduced a gauntlet-style battle royal to determine Jarrett's challenger, with Rhino emerging as the winner and defeating Jarrett for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in a hastily arranged main event. This title change was designed to deliver a memorable moment for the company's biggest show, but the decision to hotshot the belt, knowing Jarrett would regain it 2 nights later at the Spike TV tapings on November 3rd, drew scrutiny. Critics questioned putting the title on Rhino, a wrestler perceived by some as the WWE cast-off. So here, they're not beating those allegations, and they've never been able to beat the allegations in the entire history of the company. Here's what I'll say to that. Actually, I have a lot to say about it, but I'm not going to go too much into it. But with Rhino specifically, he's a young guy, right? And yes, he was a WWE cast-off, but he's also a former ECW World Heavyweight Champion. He was really good back then. And I don't think you should always hold it against a person based off of where they used to work, right? And I know it's a dirty word to say somebody used to work in WWE, but it's really dependent on the talent. Some former WWE stars work really hard when they get to the smaller companies, and they do a great job. Rhino was one of those guys. So I don't think that the WWE cast-off label is a fair label to place on somebody. They're just trying to get another job. Okay. And Rhino was just one of those guys trying to get another job. He had worked the indies for years. He made his way up to, at a young age, he became ECW World Heavyweight Champion. I think right around this time, he's probably 30, right? So he's not a super old guy. But Rhino, a wrestler perceived by some as a WWE cast-off, especially when Raven, who had a stronger storyline justification, was a viable alternative. The choice was to prioritize Rhino over other potential champions like Monty Brown or Samoa Joe, who are seen as long-term prospects. So the safe choice would have been Raven, and that's who I would have went with. But if you remember back then, Raven and Jarrett were not getting along, and Raven might not have wanted to lose to Jarrett. And Jarrett probably didn't want to lose to Raven. I don't know if that is the case or not, but that is kind of my read on the situation. And despite booking challenges, Bound for Glory delivered several standout performances. AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels was the night's highlight, earning a 4-star rating. Styles regained the title with a single fall. Was it a 4-star rating? Let me see. I'm going to pull that back up. All right, we'll go. I'm gonna look into that rating. I think it was actually rated a little bit higher. Styles regained the title with a single fall via the Styles Clash in the final second. So yeah, that was a great match. Monsters Ball, of course, and then Dutt versus Aries versus Strong versus Shelley was a good pre-show match. All right, so behind the scenes note: the event was not without its controversies and backstage developments. So Team 3D's return, originally not planned for the pay-per-view due to an injury angle, Team 3D, formerly the Dudley Boys, made a surprise appearance, attacking Team Canada post-main event to send the crowd home happy. This decision was spurred by the strong response to their funeral segment, which was the week before, prompting TNA to pull them from an all-Japan tour. I watched this thing and I didn't think that Team 3D was necessary. The main event was so super overbooked, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a little bit. Bret Hart rumors. Hart was a topic of discussion, especially at that fan fest, with speculation about a potential TNA appearance in 2006. However, Hart clarified his focus was on his WWE DVD with a picture book ruling out a wrestling return. So Jarrett, off and on for years, had been trying to get Bret, and he could just never get him. He just never could get Bret for whatever reason. And Jarrett will tell you it's because Bret always just kept wanting to go back to WWE despite everything that happened. Like that was his focus. But it would have been nice at some point to get him into TNA. It just never happened. All right. So let's get. I'll get to the play-by-play of the show here in just a second. I just had to pull something up. All right, booking shifts. So Jeff Jarrett's influence in booking has reportedly increased during this time, while Scott D'Amore's role has diminished as he focuses on opening a restaurant in Windsor. This shift sparked a debate about the direction of TNA's creative decision, and Samoa Joe's undefeated streak, a non-title four-way match. So he had lost at a non-title four-way match, like the weekend prior. Not a big deal though. But people were talking about that as like there was some backlash to like, why is Joe getting pinned in this match whenever they should treat him like he's Bill Goldberg, which at the time they were, but it was like a non-televised deal. Okay, financial and TV success. Bound for Glory marked a turning point for TNA's visibility, driven by its new Spike deal. The October 22 Impact episode drew a record 0.9 rating and 1.28 million viewers. So that's Saturday night at like 11. A 52% increase in viewership from its debut with a strong 1.5 rating among males aged 25 to 34. The upcoming November 3rd 2-hour Impact special was a focal point with expectations of a 1 to 1.1 rating. So yeah, they're doing great at this point. Remember, like the year before, they were on Fox Sports Net Friday at like 2, 3 p.m., whatever the time was, and preempted a lot of the time. And then there for a while, they went dark, kind of like right now, and you had to download their TV show from a torrent. So, all right. So yeah, AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels was 4 stars. Okay, I just wanted to double check that. I thought I didn't think I had that in my notes. Okay. All right, let's get to the show. So I don't want to do a full play-by-play of the match, but this first match and several of the matches, and talking to Billy from Philly, friend of the show, reminded me of something that I wanted to bring up. Jeff Jarrett was so good back in the day at recruiting young talent. There are so many young talent all over the show, and a lot of that was because they couldn't afford some of the more veteran talent off of the WWE scrap heap. They could afford a Rhino and a Raven, guys who had been working ECW, and they were on the independents for years, and they were never tippy top WWE guys. They were able to get the money that they needed for a guy like Kevin Nash, but he had already had a lot of money. So they were forced to get out there and recruit, and they did a great job. And this 4-way match that opened up the show on the pre-show was Sanjay Dutt winning over Austin Aries, Roderick Strong, and Alex Shelley. All of whom were, I believe, all of these guys were ROH guys. It's kind of like the dichotomy of what we see today with the way that they're recruiting for talent. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have some young talent who are who had been unsigned and unproven and not off the WWE scrap heap. Again, I don't think that every person should get the label of a WWE castoff. You know the guys that are, but then there's a guy like Steve Macklin or W. Morrissey who isn't seen as a WWE castoff because A, he wasn't overexposed in WWE, and B, he switched it up a little bit and kind of tried to make a name for himself outside of WWE. So I don't think every person should get that label, but this show, I would like for the company to go back and look at the show and realized that this is what we want. We want young talent up and down the card, mixed in with some veteran talent. And we want good to great matches the whole show. But what we don't want is a weak ass main event. So if we can get a modern day main event like what we had with Mike Santana and Trick Williams, but then a classic undercard like we had here with this 4-way to open the show. And then, of course, you get to the next match. It's Samoa Joe beating Jushin Liger. Now, it was only 7 minutes long, so it didn't really get a good star rating, which is fine. But I thought it was super exciting. It was cool to see Jushin Liger coming in from New Japan. Why not leverage some of your partnerships with Mexico and Japan? I'm sure they can get Noah guys. Like, this is the type of stuff that TNA was known for. And now AEW has taken that mantle over. TNA doesn't use anybody from like AAA anymore. I mean, I know they had Macias, but like he's like almost 50, right? And then you get to the next match. So Samoa Joe. So first match, Dutt wins. A really good match. They got 3.5 stars, but I thought it was probably a little bit better than that. Just a classic X Division showcase match on the pre-show. Samoa Joe beat Jushin Liger. So the match, he comes out with a Polynesian dance team. That was really cool. Liger comes out, tons of streamer thrown. They proceed to have a really good match. Joe beats him quick though, so they had to shorten the match because of the overbooking that they'd done later in the pay-per-view with the gauntlet match and the Jared and Rhino and all that stuff. But he ends up beating him with the coquina clutch there, choked him out in 7 minutes. Then we go to Simon Diamond, Skipper and Dave Young beating Sonny Siaki, Apollo, and Shark Boy in 7 minutes. Not really a good match. But again, I would say other than Shark Boy, actually Shark Boy was pretty young. And Simon Diamond wasn't an old guy then either. Like they're probably both in their 30s. And either Skipper, David Young, Sonny Siaki, and Apollo were all fairly young guys. This match wasn't good, but like young, look, again, more young talent trying to prove themselves on pay-per-view. Unfortunately, it didn't work. But it was still really good. I mean, the match wasn't good, but you know what I mean? Like the idea is really good. But then you get to Monty Brown beating Lance Hoyt. Now, I completely fucking disagree with Dave here. So the match is only 6 minutes, but it was a hot 6 minutes. And you don't need to go 15 minutes on every match. Like it's okay to have a 6 minute like meat fest with Monty Brown and Lance Hoyt. I loved this match. I was like, this is awesome. There was some good stuff here, and the crowd saved this match because they were going nuts, of course. Hoyt's punches are just awful. He's young. He's learning. This 20 years ago, the guy pretty new to the business at the time. Hoyt did a Pescado dive out of the ring and even got a moonsault for near fall. A cool spot was Hoyt coming off the top rope, and Brown caught him, lifted him overhead, and powerbombed him, which is a feat doing it with a guy that size. Of course, Brown ended up winning with the pounce. And then he only gave him a 1.5 stars. I thought that was fucking 3.5, 4 stars. So I watched it before reading Dave's review of it. And I wasn't reading the Observer back then, so I didn't know what he thought of this match. I watched it and I was like, this match is fantastic. And of course, Dave didn't like it, which is fine. He doesn't have to like everything that I like. Team Canada beat Conan and BG James. This is a silly ass match. They're introducing Kip James and they're doing the whole storyline where Conan doesn't trust him. Not a really good match. Star and a half. I agree with Dave there. Okay, so you get to the Ultimate X match. Petey Williams won the Ultimate X over Matt Bentley and Chris Sabin in 13 minutes. So they teased a spot where Williams likes Tracy, so they were doing that whole thing. They had Bentley doing the Bentley bounce because Tracy and they want her to bounce, so that was the whole thing back in the day. But here, let's get to the finish. So the finish, like I remember at the time, like, oh man, what a shitty finish for this match. But I just rewatched it 20 years after the fact, and Petey Williams saved the finish. So Sabin's about to win when Bentley spared him off. So they're on the cables, right? And then the X fell down at that point. So they stopped the match, brought in a crew. The guys all leave the ring and they're fighting around ringside. Now keep in mind, these guys are all in their 20s, right? These are not veteran guys. Okay. So let me see if Petey Williams won over Matt Bentley and Chris Sabin. So these guys are super young guys at the time. The only guy still wrestling is Chris Sabin. So the X falls down. They stop the match. They bring out the crew, and they put the X back up, which killed the momentum of the match. And then Bentley did a dive outside. The guys were all frustrated. I get it. As Saban and Bentley fought over the X, they both fell down. And then the X came loose again. And then Williams gets underneath the X, and he's like kind of like praying, saying, "Come here, come here, come here, come here." He's in exactly the right spot. You can tell this guy's a really well-trained pro wrestler, trained probably by D'Amore. And D'Amore is going crazy on the outside. He just sits under that thing and is like hoping and praying that the thing falls to him, and then it falls right into his hands. And then he goes crazy. He's a heel, and he's like treating it like he just won this on his own. Like he just had this incredible feat when all he really did was like those two guys fall down and get hurt, and he just lays under the X and catches it. I thought it was such a shithead heel thing to do. I enjoyed it. Now, it did kill some of the momentum of it. I think some of the fans crapped on it, but Petey Williams saved that thing with his reaction and with how he just sat under the X and just waited for it to fall to him. I thought that, they made a bad situation and turned it into like a good situation. I thought that portion of it was excellent. Okay. Dave says this wasn't the planned finish. Saban and Bentley both threw obvious fits in front of people. They did. With Bentley doing a total Shawn Michaels about it. That's his uncle. Even Williams was mad, which was stupid because he won. I'm sure he was, but he did treat it like he won a big match. He could be mad, but when he got backstage, because all the best stuff had been yet to come, but he won the match and the title shot when you were in front of the people. Even if finish is blown and you win, you shouldn't be selling that it's bad in front of the people. So yeah, he did at one point do that, but I thought he did great. Chris Harris and James Storm retained the NWA tag titles over Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens in 10. Yeah, this was a good match. Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens, they really tried hard to make the Naturals a thing, and it just never worked. But Harris beat up Douglas. So yeah, they had him handcuffed. They hit the death sentence on him. This is probably the point if they were going to bring back Team 3D, considering 3D was feuding with AMW. Maybe 3D should come out and save these guys, but they didn't. I guess they wanted to save it for the main event. And then Rhino won the Monsters Ball over Sabu, Abyss, and Jeff Hardy in 11 minutes. And this was a goddamn incredible 11 minutes. Like they beat the hell out of each other. Tons of blood, chair shots to the head. Jeff Hardy did his crazy dive in the all-timer Don West moment when Jeff Hardy's up on the stage at the highest point that he can get to, jumps over the stage through a table, and one of the great moments in TNA history. This is by far the best Monsters Ball match ever. I don't think they've ever topped it since then. They've tried and they've had some really good ones, but this is the best one ever. So I will read some of the play-by-play. Okay. So Rhino won a Monsters Ball over Sabu, Abyss, and Jeff Hardy in 11:47. A brawl all over the place, but it was the show stealer. The story here is that all four guys were kept without food or water for 12 hours and were kept in the dark. Don West noted that Hardy looked like he'd done that many a time. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, Rhino had clearly been out since he had already did an angle 2 hours earlier. Typical TNA. I guess they must have made sure he didn't eat by doing a last-minute weigh-in. Sabu bled right away, and Rhino bled as well. They did chairs and weapon shots, a bunch of tables. Jeff Hardy had a ladder. So every wrestler in the match, most of the management, and nearly everyone else who had heard about it tried to talk. Okay, so here, this is where Jeff Hardy gets the idea. So Hardy climbed up the stage to where he was about 10 feet in the air. Then he climbed up another spot, even higher. He had to leap off of the top and clear the ramp to Swanton Abyss. It appeared he was coming from 12 feet up, but he had to fly 15 feet out to make it work. He hit the move perfectly. It was spectacular as hell, but Hardy is going to hurt himself real bad someday if he keeps doing things like that. To this day, he has not gotten hurt really bad in wrestling. Now, this was way more risky than that giant ladder spot he did at WrestleMania, and a margin of error wasn't much on the dive, and he'd have been hurt real bad without the perfect flight. Every wrestler in the match, most of management, and everyone else who heard about it tried to talk Hardy out of the idea. People gave up when they realized that no matter what he was told, he had already decided that he was doing it. It turned people around on him because of a good percentage of the Orlando crowd boos him heavily, and after doing that, I can't see him being booed for a while. The only question is, after this move, as spectacular as anything in TNA history, why did Hardy and Abyss even get up? Sabu did the triple jump moonsault and Arabian facebuster on Rhino. Abyss came back and threw Sabu over the top rope. Through a table, he pulled out thumbtacks, but before he could use them, Rhino gored the holy hell out of him through a table. Rhino then pinned Hardy after a pile driver off the middle rope. Luckily, Hardy got his head out. Unluckily, it was way too obvious, but that's another scary spot. 4 stars. I mean, that's probably a modern, like if they had more kickouts, it's probably a 5, but he just wasn't giving out 5s pretty regularly back then. He just gives them out way more often now. But a great match. Okay, AJ Styles defeated Christopher Daniels. Really, really good match. Probably the best of the night. It was definitely voted best of the night but it got 4 stars just like Monsters Ball. So 2 4-star matches back to back. So the reversals wound up with Styles hitting the Styles Clash with seconds left to get the pin. Yeah. Both guys sold more and worked exhaustion better than their previous bouts. It was better than the Angle Michaels Iron Man match, but not a match of the year level bout. The crowd gave both men a standing ovation, and Styles was crying in the end. Really good stuff. Okay, so at this point, they announced that because Kevin Nash can't make it, they're going to do a gauntlet match. And the winner of the gauntlet match will then get a title shot. So Rhino wins a gauntlet. It was a 10-man gauntlet. So it opened up with Joe and Killings, and then Sabu, and then Lance Hoyt, Abyss, Hardy, Seb. And then Brown came out. But yeah, anyway, Rhino won in 14 minutes. And then Rhino pinned Jeff Jarrett in 5 minutes to win the NWA title. So Tito Ortiz was the referee, but he didn't really play much in the storyline, nor did the original planned turn. Rhino bled right away, and Jarrett hit him with a garbage can. So this match sucked, by the way. 1.25 stars. They just went to the outside. They had a casket. They're fighting around the casket. AMW gets involved. And then Rhino just hits a gore out of nowhere and pins him. And then, of course, everybody came to the ringside. A big brawl breaks out, and then they do the whole return of Team 3D, and that was it. That was the whole match. So, hindsight, they should have had better leadership skills, and they should have put Rhino or Raven in the match, but they couldn't get that done. Or they could have just put Jeff Jarrett in the Monsters Ball match and had that main event, and still did every spot but made it a title match. And Jeff Jarrett could have just won that since they put the title on him a couple weeks later. But when someone drops out of the main event of the pay-per-view, I think they wanted to do a make good for the crowd and do a title switch. And that's what they did. So there you go. Bound for Glory. Next week, I don't know what I'm going to be reviewing next week. Maybe I'll do Bound for Glory 2006. Maybe I'll do that as we wait for TNA to come back on November 13th. But guys, that's going to do it for me this week. I really appreciate everybody being here. Make sure you're a Patreon subscriber. Go to patreon.com/The Mike and JD Show. And until next time, mahalo. Oh, let me get to my outro. You guys want the regular Brace for Impact outro, or you guys want the OG? Let's go OG, Brace for Intro Classic. Brace for Impact Intro Classic. Here we go.